go ahead and start right away by welcoming you to Monday Night Madness with Karen and Amy. And it's a little madness today because Amy's having a slight technical difficulty, so you don't get to see her pretty face. And you get to see me with wet hair because I just got done pruning for the last 6 hours and I was covered with pollen from top to bottom until I took my shower and shed all that beautiful yellow color down my drain. Isn't it great not to have allergies? We should really do a few calls on how to never have allergies again, because we can reverse those too. But I'm just telling you, I have wet hair and you can't see Amy, and that's just how it's going to go today, because we are both super excited to share with you some of our top takeaways from the relationship retreat that we just did. It was absolutely amazing. Amy, you want to pop in there with something?
Yes, well, first of all, quick shout out to Skip who ran our last live call on pruning. So if any of you
Yeah.
are, if it's that time of year to prune your bushes and your trees and your apple orchards, whatever you have, make sure you watch his video. It was absolutely amazing 2 hour demonstration of pruning techniques
And
live
that was
from
in the
Beverly
Human
Fields
Body
Orchard.
Master Guide, though. That was in the Human Body Master Guide. That wasn't Monday Night Madness, Amy.
All right. Right. So you can find that in the Human Body Master Guide under live calls. It was fabulous. But yes, the retreat summit was incredible. And they definitely, you'll be seeing their faces a lot more here at Holistic Health Educators. As we can all relate to, stress and emotions related to relationships are felt very physiologically. When we have heartache, when we have that sinking feeling in our stomach, when we have a headache from a relationship topic that we just can't get out of our minds and can't focus on anything else. Relationships are experienced extremely viscerally by the human body. In fact, would love it if the next 100 years were spent better understanding, attempting to better understand how this happens. Raise your hand if you can relate to that feeling of something going on in your heart that is just completely beyond even our understanding of neurotransmitters. I have feelings in my heart sometimes that I'm like, this can't even be explained by acetylcholine and norepinephrine. Like this surpasses the normal, physiological explanations of what happens in your nerves and your organs and your vital tissues. And so there, I heard the expression that, we've often heard that, our spirits in our body, but I really much prefer the expression that actually our body is in our spirit, because our spirit is so big. Our spirit's even bigger than our body. And so it's actually our body is housing our spirit, but it's also the other way around. So having them here involved in holistic health educators is such a relevant and extremely necessary collaboration to happen, because so much of people's physiological pain these days is directly associated with relationships. And that shows up in the body in so many different ways. And it's been a running joke, but it really is true in the holistic health space that if you want to be a good holistic health practitioner, you almost have to be a relationship coach. And you have to know how to like ask people those questions about how their relationships are going. And what Karen and I get to talk about today is one concept that really can put people back in their power. People don't like feeling, none of us like feeling powerless, and like our happiness or our satisfaction or our heart is dependent on someone else changing, on someone else giving us more love, on someone else changing their behavior towards us. And the principle that Karen and I are talking about tonight is one of the most centering and empowering principles that I've ever heard this couple teach on. And so it's a tool you can use for yourself, but maybe also, use in your actual practice.
Well, and I would like to jump in and just mention that this is like this tool that we're going to teach you right now is something you can use at your relationship with your spouse, each one of your children, absolutely every single one of your children individually, with someone that you work with, someone that you go to school with, someone at your church. Like any relationship you have with anyone, you can look at this one example to know what's in balance and what out of balance. And interesting, now I don't, for all those mothers that are out there listening live and listening later, I had a lot of children, and I actually had a booklet, I had a binder, and I had these monthly personal mother interviews with the kids. I would call each of the children in one by one, and I would ask them, because there's so many kids, I don't know who needs new underwear all the time. I mean, hello, and so I would meet with them and be like, hey, So how are you doing at school? Like, how are you doing with your relationships at school? What kind of clothing items do you need? Let's go shopping. What's making you happy at home? What are some relationships? And then every single one of the relationships, I would have them number 1 to 10. So, hey, Amy, how is your relationship with Jenna? She'd give me a number. Eric, she'd give me a number. Emily, she'd give me a number. Julia, she'd give me a number. Lily, Rosie, right? Ariella, she would give me a number on all of those relationships. Dad. So I would know what relationships that month were suffering so that I could work when I met with the other individual at seeing what I could do to help strengthen that relationship. So if you aren't doing that as a parent, please do that. I don't care if you only have 2 children, do that, because you don't know how they're actually getting along. You can hear them bickering and fighting, but that doesn't mean they're not getting along. Some relationships like to bicker and fight, and then they get along great, right? And so I would encourage you to actually assess your own relationships with those people. Write down your top 10 people that you love hanging out with and rate those relationships. Maybe do 15 or 20 at work and at school and at church and at play. And then if you have children, I'd encourage you to do this for your children, because this next principle is something that you are going to be able to use in every single relationship in your life. And it's really simple. It's really simple. You're going to have 2 graphs. You're going to have 2 little lines. And one of them is commitment, 0 through 10. How committed are you to that relationship? And right next to it, you're going to have involvement. In how involved, how much are you participating in that relationship, 0 through 10? If you're really committed to being the best wife possible, the best husband possible. You are so committed, you're never going to even glance at another person of the opposite sex or same sex, whatever. And but whatever you are, you're darn committed to that relationship. But if your involvement is like down here, we have a problem. If you're not going on dates and you're not helping with laundry and dishes and helping boost the other person, whatever that involvement looks like, you're going to have this rubber band that's getting really taut and conversed. So this is a great time to look at how involved am I with that relationship and how committed am I to that relationship. And so I'm sure Amy's bursting at the seams as well.
Well, I love that you mentioned that when it's off balance in the direction of you're more committed, on paper than you are involved in this person's life. Where this shows up in this world of singles a lot is being more involved than there is commitment. And this leads to so much heartbreak when you're basically playing house with someone, or when you're just incredibly involved and you feel like you're pouring out love, but that commitment is not there. That's another recipe for heartbreak. And so this couple is teaching this divine principle. Actually, I don't even have to bring in the divinity of it. It really is just like psychological principle of your level of involvement matching the level of commitment that there is in the relationship, so that you don't just feel like you're pouring out your guts into a relationship where you don't have the security of commitment. And that really just made so much sense. So they encourage that your level of involvement rise in proportion to the level of commitment that there is in the relationship. Who here has been in a relationship like that, or seen a relationship where there's a lot of involvement, doing stuff together all the time, but the commitment is low, and then someone ends up feeling used or heartbroken, or doesn't know why the other person's not reciprocating, and it's because there's an imbalance. So this is where they taught about boundaries, and I loved their take on boundaries, because I've almost developed like an aversion towards the word boundaries over the past 5 years, because a lot of times that boundaries gets used, it's by or how I've seen it be used is on like social media posts where people are like, you know, just totally skipping the communication piece, and or if they're communicating, it's to do like a one-sided thing, and jumping straight to like, oh, just cut them out of your life and have boundaries for yourself. And I like a lot of times I feel like that concept's been like that label's been misused, or has been used to try to control other people's behavior. When they say boundaries, boundaries are for you. Like boundaries are for yourself. For me, having a boundary is I'm not going to be more involved with a man than he is committed to me. And that's a boundary I'll have. I might want to do more and, just spend all this time together, make the meals together, whatnot. But if that commitment isn't there, then that would be me violating my boundaries and saying, hey, this is actually potentially an unsafe investment of my time if that commitment isn't there in reciprocation to, like, the level of our involvement. So they really emphasize the point, when it comes to your personal boundaries, sometimes that can involve, making requests of other people, but most of the time, boundaries are really just going to come down to you and your behavior. And it helps release some of that codependency that you can end up generating with another person, where you hope that the more you give, the more they'll give back. When actually, what you could do is like maybe pull in a little bit and make sure that your needs are taken care of, and make sure that you have your own hobbies and you have your own things going on, and that there's an equal balance there.
And I want to share an example. I was actually talking to my mom and dad before the call, and I told them I was going to share this example because they are such an example of equally committed and wow involved. Like they're at the top on both, and they have been almost my entire life. They weren't the first probably 5 or 10 years, but then they certainly were. And let me tell you what they do, because this is so fun. I grew up in a home where 7 p.m. rolled around and my parents literally made themselves some fancy treat, right? Or poured themselves a glass of wine and they were gone. They went into the sunroom. There were only 2 reasons you could ever even knock on the door. The house was burning down or someone was in dire medical straits. Okay. Other than that, you could not disturb my parents. It was their time, and they would take 2 hours in the evening just to sit by themselves, talk about the day, talk about work. And they knew we were going to be safe, and we knew we could do, we could watch something or read or whatever we wanted to do, but they made sure we had a good dinner, and they always spent time together at the end of the day. That was just, that sometimes was only an hour, but it was every single night that I can ever remember growing up. And they go to bed early, and mom would put on some cute little nightgown thing that was appropriate to walk around the house in, don't worry. Anyhow, and they'd snuggle up on the bed and they'd sit in bed and they'd talk some more. And, it was just like, I remember that because they were so committed to spending time with one another. And so I'm wondering what other suggestions you might all have, but there's ways that we can be more, even we're raising kids or we're living in the same house and we're both really busy because we all have jobs. What are some ways that we can be more involved in our relationship with our spouse, so that person that we're sharing our home with and that we're loving, to match that commitment? Because you're obviously committed if you're living in the same house, but are you really committed? And so looking at, how committed are we to this relationship? And then raising the bar on the involvement section of it. And I can just start off with, that's one thing that's a big takeaway in my relationship with my husband, is we definitely spend time together. We work out every morning. We're in the sauna at least an hour every single day. It's like we make sure that we spend a lot of time together, and we actually work together right now, which has been amazing, but we don't ever not want to have that time together because we thoroughly enjoy being together. And so we work out. That's our big thing. We work out in the morning, we sauna, morning or night, and then we do whatever we do during the day, but we know that we're going to have that time together. So what are some other things that you might recommend that you can do in your homes, or you're going to be doing in your homes, to spend more time together, or go on date nights, or whatever you might be thinking of, that something that might inspire somebody else?
Something that I did.
Mhm.
I was never really a big sports person, but my husband was. So one of the things I started doing a few years ago with him was watching Sunday football with him. And he would always make a bet. So we just kind of go back and forth. Okay, who should I bet for? Blah blah blah. And that was just something that touched his heart for me to do that.
That's awesome.
That's
It was
And we
something
were
you wanted
married
to talk
for
about.
43
Yeah.
years.
Oh my gosh,
Oh,
that's great.
I love that, Sherry. Thank you.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Yeah, Julie,
Oh, that was Julie.
that was Sherry.
Yeah, sorry, I can't, my camera won't work, but so we we do the 1-1-1 rule, where 1 week a year you go on a little getaway, just the two of you, go on a date 1 night a week, And then each of you initiate intimacy one time each week. So in that way, you just schedule times. And then, and also, I mean, we've been married for 30 years and my husband still opens the door for me. What, even if, and not, we're not even necessarily going to we could be going to the grocery store and he'll open the door for me, for the car door. And so just doing those little things, for each other. In fact, there was, I used to do, whenever we fixed like a sandwich or burgers or something like that, like use ketchup, I would do a little heart on his bun. And I did that a few years ago. I used to do that all the time. And we had some friends over and he just thought the guy that was over there with us, he just thought that was the coolest thing that he's like, I can't believe she does that for you. She do that all the time. And he's like, yeah, I do that. She does that all the time. So just little things I think can go a long way.
Yeah, Julie, that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that. We got any other pointers from the group?
We drink tea together now.
Okay. Is this like an evening ritual or is it like a breakfast tea?
It started off evening, but then on the weekends we're morning, afternoon, and night, and sometimes 2 at night. And I don't have to put the kettle on anymore. He does it.
Oh.
Yay.
That's awesome, Tara.
Yeah.
Evening tea. I feel like that's like one of the most needed blood pressure medications everyone needs is evening tea.
Yeah. And he likes to watch NCIS and I don't, but he made an effort to, drink tea. Well, and he's kind of hooked on the tea, but he made an effort. So I will sometimes watch that show with him, not all the time because I'm not a fan of those reality shows. So,
Mhm.
but it's nice to sit down and drink some tea with him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
love that. Thank you, Tara. Love that. Avery, do you feel like elaborating on your comment? If not, you're good, but that's a great comment.
Yeah, I don't really mind. It's been a long time, probably about 9 years avoiding things, it seems like. And during that coaching thing, there's a lot of like that boundary thing that everybody's talking about. I really love that personal boundaries because I allow people to trample on me and keep pushing forward and everything like that. But one of the biggest lessons that I've learned at this school is self-help and helping myself, in other words, because uh, all I do is keep pushing out, and I don't know. It's becomes hard after a good minute of neglect. What I feel is neglect. It doesn't matter if it's right or if it's wrong. I feel that it's neglect, so I need to speak up and say what that is versus just letting it go and be like, it doesn't matter. I mean, nobody talks anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I try to, but
Yeah.
and just being real with it and not letting that go past my boundaries. That's the key factor here is not letting it go past whatever standards or privileges you allot yourself. Just making sure that you always got your foothold,
Yes,
pretty much.
yeah. No, I love that, Avery, how when he said, boundaries mean I love me. Oh no, I love you and I love me. That's what it is. Like I love you and I love me. So I'm not gonna let this relationship get to the point where I feel bitter and estranged from you. Because that's not true love either. That's not a higher form of love than not saying anything. So totally relatable, man.
Well, one of my things is that I brought up with Melissa was, well, what happens if this behavior doesn't change? What happens then? I mean, you can forgive, you can forget, you can move on. And my whole thing is for myself is I've already this course rationalized everything for me and it was all there. I've said all this even myself. And I mean, I'm aware that this is the process. And if I extinguish every avenue, all the way up to this point, and then I turn and have feelings that's different than what I should have been, I don't know how that's wrong when I was already pushed to the side.
Mhm, mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, it's a very dynamic process, but I just love what you say about that. Really, true talk, taking time to like have those real
yeah.
talks. So
Yeah.
yeah, appreciate that, Avery. Awesome comment.
We have
Thank you.
Maureen up here. Maureen's got her hand
Hey,
raised.
Maureen.
Hi. So one of the things that I do with my kids is every night, typically at dinner time, right after grace, we do high-low. And so what was your high for the day and what was your low for the day? And if we don't get to eat dinner for some reason, we do it at nighttime. And I just find that it really, you learn a lot more than you would with how was school? Fine. What did you do? Nothing. That kind of those types of answers. And you know, so that when they talk about what, their high was something that happened in school, and then you just kind of, well, it starts the conversation getting into more details, and you just seem to learn a lot more about what's going on with them. So I find that that's really, really worked well. And even though initially it was kind of like they thought it was dumb, whereas now they're starting it, they won't start eating until we actually play high-low. And now even their guests, their friends, when their friends come over, the girlfriends, they get into it as well. So it's been about 2 years now we've been doing that every night, and I just find that that's
Wow.
really made a big difference.
Wow, that's great conversation topic starter. Thank you, Maureen. Love that. Cool. Kelsey, we'll hear from you and then we'll probably move on after
Yeah,
that.
when I don't have any kids or any of that, but like I just remember my mom, me and her would pray every night, and we had the same set of prayers every day. And every single time that we would stop praying, like right at the end, she'd be like, "Okay, so what do you want to thank God for, and what do you want to like uh for him to help you with tomorrow?" And that was such a good, and I guess because like I was already feeling vulnerable, and then I would just like talk about all the struggles that I was having. And I was not just talking to God, I was talking directly to her. And I think that she could understand my struggles a little bit more, in a different perspective. And that for me has always been like such a fond memory.
Mhm. That's very cool. I love it when people make prayer more dynamic than just some kind of like rattling something off the God when they make it a conversation like that. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Love that.
Excellent.
Thank you, Kels. I just saw a couple people come on camera. Were there any last comments on this before we move along?
There are in the chat section. We've got some nice things in the chat section.
Yes,
Physical
I hear
touch.
exactly. I hear Anne calling out
cuddling.
snuggle time. Love that,
Snuggle
Anne.
time. Yep.
Got
And Amy, I want to do a shout out real quick for the couples out there and the people who have intimate relations. You can order these books, and I'm just going to say this because I think I want to. You can order a book and all the pages are sealed, and there might be 56 or 100 of them in there, and it's for the man or for the woman. So if you're like, I don't know what we could do that would be fun and intimate, it's all ideas. Some will cost money, some are free, but you can take that page out of the book when it's your turn that week, and it tells you what to do. It's super fun. And then you can surprise your loved one because they don't know what's going to happen. And then they can do that same thing for you. So if you're like, I just don't know what I would do to make that kind of fun, there are books out there that you can order for couples so that you don't have to think of everything, that those things are already there. Just keep it in a locked box if you have children in your home so they never find it. But anyhow, just thought I'd put that out there.
I was really trying to figure out what kind of book this was. I was like, are we talking like picnic at the park, or is there like
It might start with a picnic, but it's going to end in bed. Okay, so
sounds like love is in the air at last. Well, that's beautiful.
there
That's
you
beautiful.
go.
So, yeah, we have one last hand raised and then we'll move on. Jules, you want to add the piggyback on that?
Well, I wanted to piggyback on the snuggle time, just like the being present with each other. There was one time where my husband and I there was a concert or something that we were going to, and we asked our son if he wanted to bring a date, and we would just kind of double date with him. And before we went to the concert, we were going to a restaurant. And as we're walking into the restaurant, my husband and I are holding hands. And I mean, to us, that's not a big deal. And to my son, that's not a big deal. I mean, there'd be times where we'd be smooching in the kitchen. He's like, can you guys stop? I want to come in and get something to eat, So for him, that wasn't a big deal. But it was the girl that was his date. She said, your parents hold hands? He's like, yeah. She's like, I don't think I've ever seen my parents hold hands. She's like, I don't think I've even seen them kiss. And she even made the comment that her dad would sleep on the sofa a lot.
Yeah.
And so he told us this later after we got home, and it just broke my heart because I'm like, that's a horrible way to be raised, in seeing your parents like not be affectionate to each other. And that's, you know, that's the way our kids have been raised. And so, yeah, I think being present and just holding hands and hugging and just all of that, I think is just very important, especially as an example to our kids.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So yeah, thank you, Julie. Awesome. So, there's the other side of this, which is like, well, what if I have absolutely no desire to do this with my partner? And whether that's due to like, loss of attraction, loss of trust, loss of um you know, just too much pent up frustration in the situation. And that's definitely a topic for another one of these calls. And that was actually a big part of the workshop, was learning how to have some of those difficult conversations. They really emphasize you gotta make space to let the love back in. And some things do need to get resolved or need to be heard in order for that trust to be rebuilt or that space to be made in the heart. So Karen, I'm not there's stuff we could get into related to that, but or we can save that part for another call. I just want to affirm how valuable it is to like learn from experts, because sometimes you're just in a relationship and you're like, I don't even know what the next best step is right now. And the good news is there are such things as relationship experts, and we really wish the information they teach was common knowledge. And that's a big reason why we're bringing it we're bringing it straight into our programs at HHE, into our holistic psychology course. Some of their workshops will be made available for people who are members, of Human Body Master Guide and things like that. Just because we can't be out there learning about water and exercise and sunshine and nutrition and then just be walking around not even having circulation going to our vital digestive tract organs because we're so stressed out and sick to our stomach. We're not even breaking down the good food we're eating because we're too frustrated about a relationship. That doesn't even make sense. That doesn't make sense. I actually think a health coach could go out there and do more good just getting on Zoom calls with people and asking them how they're really doing and letting them talk through things and let them talk about their relationships than giving them another workout book or nutrition guide or putting them on supplements. Like, these people have got to get blood flow back to their digestive tract. And relationship stress is a huge, I'm not trying to get all health statty right now, but it is a huge contributor to high blood pressure, to gut health, chronic gut health issues, and the whole 9 yards, just because of how much these emotions affect us physiologically. So this is just to say that I just absolutely love that here at Holistic Health Educators, we do have a holistic approach to human health. Like, we care about your heart, we care about your relationships, we care about your home environment. It's not just about nutrition and sunlight, and even though we do love that, but this is why, because this is where it gets real. Back to you, Big K.
Yeah, well, I'm just excited for you all to literally consider numbering your relationships in 2 different columns. How committed are you? How involved are you? Because you're going to actually be able to see right on that sheet of paper, oh, I need to get more involved with this relationship. I've kind of put it by the side, on the side burner. I just think it's going to be very helpful to a lot of people. We are very excited about many things that we've known John and Narelle for decades. And we've loved learning from them and being very dear friends with them. But that takeaway is always one of my favorite things to rekindle, is just looking at that relationship with all of your relationships, especially ones that are suffering a little bit, and finding ideas that you can do to strengthen that commitment, and maybe that's renewing your vows, or maybe that's, making more of a commitment, whatever that might be, as well as balancing that off with playtime and fun time and time together to be involved in that relationship. I love that people are getting, and men, don't be afraid to start getting their wives or your girlfriend's door starting tomorrow or starting today. Like, it's fun. Women love it. Most women, I love it. Hello. I love that. I even on the property, he gets my doors for me, and I'm like, honey, we're going to go to the building next door. He's like, that's it. You can't touch that door. Okay, fine. So like, don't be afraid to find those things that make that person feel special. Amy, I think it'd be great if we continued some relationship, madness calls in the future. I think that'd be fun to sprinkle those in, maybe even, once a month, twice a month.
Yeah.
Like that.
There's one last thing I want to leave with, if that's okay, Mom, before we wrap this one up.
Please, please.
one of the biggest things that stood out to me about John and Norel's approach was the true emphasis on personal accountability in all things. I mean, some people would consider it personal about accountability to the extreme, but talk about putting the power back in your own court. And I just want to give you one example of what we even mean when we're saying personal accountability. You know, someone was working with this corporate executive, and he was complaining. He's like, "Oh, my wife is just so passive. My wife is so passive." And you know, and the coach goes, "Let's go ahead and reframe that to, I have not yet learned how to hold space for powerful, independent women, so I create relationships where women are passive around me." Move on to the next person. It's like, "Oh, my husband's so selfish," or "I always just date these selfish people." And it's like, let's reframe that. I haven't learned how to use my voice in a healthy way in relationships. So I create relationships where I overgive and then feel bitter towards the people for not fulfilling requests I never even made to them. So it's like any pattern you're seeing showing up in your relationships, you can do this really cool thing where you turn it and say, I haven't learned XYZ, so I create relationships where XYZ happens. I think that's just such an empowering thing to realize, instead of staying in that mode of like, "Oh, I'm so upset. I always get walked over," or "men are so this," or "women are so this." It's just really powerful to realize like the role we have in the relationships we're actively creating, so that we can have the awareness of it and then know what to do about it. And it takes so much blame off the other person and puts so much power back in our court. You guys like that little flip sentence thing? I mean, we can end the recording here in a few minutes, but man, what a powerful thing to workshop is, just, you know, when patterns are showing up, and even to have that awareness for our own relationships, what types of, if there's any pattern that repeats itself in our lives, it's a really powerful tool to know how to take ownership for what we're creating in it.
That was awesome. An excellent way to end, Amy. So the two big takeaways: look at your commitment compared to the involvement, and look inside and flip things around to see what you can be doing different and better in that relationship. And we are actually posting in the next couple hours, I believe, a link to a "What a Woman Wants, What a Man Wants." It'll be on our blog. It's an excellent recording from John. I've heard this presentation so many times, and the one that we're posting is one of my favorite. And so we're going to go ahead and get that posted for you. We really would like you all to stay on for a minute, because we have a couple of really important questions we want to get from studio audience, and we'd like your answers. So we're going to have to close the recording right now. We are
Wait.
so glad that you joined us.
Yes, and I know I said that was the last thing I was going to say, and
That's why I was like, okay.
in my closing statement of my last thing that I'm really saying, it's also just that there's just a huge deficiency of love out there. So as much love as we can smother on these beautiful, tender souls around us, the better. So some of these conversations are hard to have, but people aren't walking around with a full tank these days, and it really helps to pour it in there. So anyway, but yeah, great discussion, everyone. So thank you so much for your participation, and thank you, Karen. Love that.
Oh, I love it too. You guys are amazing. We are excited to see you next week on Monday Night Madness.